All right, we have one more video here for our first week, and then I would move on to the video uh, for the first assignment. Goodness gracious, that's the week 1 assignment. Before you can get to that, you need to complete the module on ethics, and that's really as simple as going to a quiz that I have up on Canvas. It's only got a couple of questions. They're all yes or no. It's not really about right or wrong. It's more the fact that as I stated in my previous video, that adherence to an ethical standard is important for everybody, no matter what endeavor you might find yourself in. And it is important for any discipline in information technology. Whether you're a network administrator, a server administrator, if you're a programmer, then you're probably at some point going to be privy to somebody else's sensitive information. And it is everyone's responsibility to maintain their integrity and the integrity of their organization and to remain good stewards of the trust that customers or students or staff or patients or whoever you happen to serve place in your organization and in turn in you. But that ethical standard is probably, or at least in my estimation, even more important in the field of cybersecurity because you are specifically entrusted with security, you are specifically entrusted with sensitive information, and you are specifically entrusted with the knowledge, generally speaking, to defeat all those security measures. It may not be true of everything, but it's true in enough circumstances that it certainly should warrant some amount of pause. Essentially what I'm getting at is that if any average random person were to suffer a failure to adhere to those principles, and they were to have an ethical lapse, it would be bad. It would be a personal failing. Somebody would suffer as a result. But as a security professional, if you were to suffer a similar lapse, it would be all the more detrimental because not only would that be a personal failing, it would be a professional failing. And generally speaking, those lapses are far more damaging than the average individual. It's sort of like if a lawyer suffers a breach of trust, then they're considered a bad lawyer. And it kind of gives lawyers a bad name, but most people kind of consider lawyers to be ethically ambiguous to begin with. If a police officer were to suffer a lapse of that kind of judgment, it's much worse. We consider them not only is it a personal failure, it's a professional failure, right? And it reflects badly on all police, and we can see what the ramifications of the true social cost of something like that can be. As a security professional, you are, as the police are, responsible for not only maintaining your own integrity, but ensuring the integrity of the entire discipline is maintained. If you were to look at the standards of conduct for just about any professional organization, and at this point, the gold standard for certifications in information security is the CISSP. Now, the ethical standards for the CISSP are very simple, but providing good security, maintaining confidentiality for your principal is not the first principle. There are loftier goals that begin with, for example, safeguarding society in general, right? Lives are more important than data, this kind of a thing. So what I'm getting at is it's really important to make sure that you have and ethics is not necessarily just following rules. Almost everybody in cybersecurity, well, not these days, that's changed a lot since professionalism has come to the discipline, but let's just say that for the longest time in the field of cybersecurity, moral ambiguity or ethical ambiguity was normal. And I would argue that for the large part, it kind of still is. Because for every person out there who spends their life blue teaming and safeguarding people's data, well, there's just as much time that individual devotes to maybe, breaking security. It's part of what makes cybersecurity fun, right? Is learning to take things apart and then putting them back together and then finding ways to undermine security so that you can make it better. But that's not really what ethics is, right? Ethics is a trustworthiness. It's what you do with that information that matters. And that's really what I want to impress upon you now with this information in this quiz and in this course. So the quiz, I said is very simple. It's simply, that you have read the EC Council's Code of Ethics, which is the standard ethics for example, the Certified Ethical Hacker certification, and I believe the Offensive Security Professional certification all use the EC Council's Code of Ethics. So if you're going to work in cybersecurity, I find them to be pretty average, par for the course as far as your ethical standards go. However, you will also need to make sure that you're familiar with the administrative policies that will govern you as UWSP students. We all must abide by, myself and yourself as students and faculty, we all must abide by the Wisconsin Board of Regents policies, and they have a policy on the acceptable use of technology resources. You must read that and you must adhere to that. I cannot authorize you to break that as part of a course, and so you must make sure that you understand that and that you stay within the confines of that policy. And then, of course, there are other things that we must be worried about too, because not only are there administrative policies at play, but sometimes hacking is illegal. And so I want to make sure that you are familiar with both the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act and the Wisconsin's computer crime law, both of which will tell you precisely what can and cannot be done. For the purposes of those laws, you do have authorization to attack the game and the game only, to be clear. This is also being hosted up on the Google Cloud. So if you mess around on their infrastructure, you're definitely going to get yourself in trouble. Just the game. We're only focusing on the game, so no hacking the hardware, please. Next, the last three are just kind of heads up for you. One of them is I agree to do this, and the other one is I agree not to do this. And it's essentially that you're going to agree to stay within the parameters of the exercise. You're not going to intentionally do anything that you know to be illegal or wrong. You will adhere to those ethical standards. And if you have any questions, you will reach out to me before you do something stupid. That's basically what it comes down to. Now, the last one, very simply, is that I am an instructor, and I am the information security officer here on this campus. As the instructor, I'm giving you permission to attack this game and to do all of this. As the information security officer, I'm telling you, do not do anything to the university infrastructure, Google's infrastructure. Basically, follow all of the rules that I've laid out here, because if you get in trouble, I will know, and I will have to take action on that, and I don't want to do that. Also, just because I'm an instructor here does not mean that I even have the authority to override myself as the information security officer. And as an instructor, I certainly don't have the authority to overrule, for example, the vice chancellors, the chancellor, anyone at UW System who happens to be in information security who might have a problem with this, the Board of Regents, and local law enforcement, federal law enforcement. I have absolutely no ability to say, hey, it's cool, guys, we're having a game hacking course. So it's really that simple. I don't want to draw this out. I think I've said enough, at least enough I feel that I've made the point very clear, except to say before we part that if you have any questions on this, if you have any questions throughout the course as far as whether or not something is or is not acceptable, whether or not something would or would not be considered a violation of any of these standards, please contact me before you do them. I'm happy to interpret that. I'm happy to give you more time. I'm happy to walk you through. If you can only think of an illegal way to do something, I'll be happy to point you in the right direction so that you can stay within the confines. All of this is achievable within the confines of these ethical standards that have been laid out. All right, so that said, happy hacking. Let's get to it. Let's start running through some of these videos and start breaking some stuff, right?